Hey everyone, welcome to my Java crash course. Today we're going to be learning about Java at an introductory level. So Java is a pretty amazing programming language and it's used everywhere. It's used in Android applications, backend development, system programs. Now Java is mainly known for its usage of object-oriented programming. We're not going to get into that this class or this video, but hopefully in the future I might make a video on it. Today we're going to be learning about the basics of it instead. Now this is really meant for all beginners and we're going to go through how to install it as well. And this video takes a very similar approach to that of my C# course. And C# and Java are really similar. So if you know C#, well, learning Java isn't going to be much difficult. Without further ado, let's begin the video. Alright, so the first thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and download Java. Go to java.com and click Java Download. It's going to directly detect your operating system, and Java is available on every operating system. In fact, the motto for Java is deploy code once, deploy anywhere. Now over here, go ahead and click Start Free Agreement, and it's going to download Java. Now once you're done that, in order to test if it works, head on over to your terminal. Okay, go ahead and open that up. Alright, and go ahead and just type in Java. And you should see something like this. If you guys don't see an error, well, just try and re-download it once again. Alright, now let's go ahead and start learning about Java and some code. Alright, now that that's done, what you're gonna want to do is just go ahead and open up any sort of editor that you have. A simple notepad would also work. I'm using Visual Studio Code. So if you're using Visual Studio Code, and I highly recommend it, go ahead and install the Java extension. This is going to give you some basic highlighting. Alright, here, this is how it looks like. It's this one that I have. Which one? Yeah, it's this one. It's by Red Hat, which is a really big billion-dollar company. Alright, so now that you've installed that, let's go ahead and make a file. So go ahead and call this file whatever you want, but I suggest call it main.java, as most files are usually named that. And I'm going to explain why in a moment. So the reason why it's called main.java is because there's going to be a public class. Your public class is the same as the name of your file. So I have main.java, so my public class has to be called main. Now, inside of this class, what you're going to want to do is go ahead and create a simple function. Now, we're going to go over functions in a little bit. But right now, let's just, create a function. So go ahead and type public static void main. Alright, I'm going to explain to you guys what this means so far, first of all. So what public static void main means is pretty simple. The word public means that it can be accessed anywhere. Static means that the value will never change, and void means it doesn't have to return anything. This is because some functions return values. But like I said, we're going to get there later. And whatever you call main is what's going to run first. So always, have one function called main. Inside of this main, you're going to want to write string, okay, and a square brackets, and args. Alright, now this is the basic boilerplate for Java. Now what string args just means is that it can just take in any sort of string, which I'm about to explain to you guys in a moment with variables. Alright, so what are variables? Variables are anything that hold data. It's as simple as that. In math, it also has the exact same purpose, to hold some sort of value. However, in math, it's just numbers. In coding, it can be anything. It can be numbers, words, and even true or false statements. So let's first learn about numbers. So to make a variable that holds a number, you're going to want to type int. So int stands for integer. Then what you're going to want to do is go ahead and name your variable. I'm going to name mine number. And then what you do is you set it equal to a value and put a semicolon. Think of a semicolon as a period. And it's going to stop and that's just where the line is going to end. Alright? Now I can do anything I want with this number. Like for example, I can take my number and I can go ahead and add 5 to it. So to do that, I'm going to write number is equal to number plus 5. And let's suppose if I want to see this number on this terminal over here. Doing this is very simple. All I'm going to do is I'm going to write system.out.println, and I'm going to print out the number. Alright, so all this does is it goes into the system and prints out in the system this number. To run this, you're going to want to first of all do is write javac, which is Java compile, and you're going to write your file name, which is main.java. Then what you're going to want to do is write Java main. As you can see over here, it prints out 60. So yeah, that's just how numbers work. The next thing we're going to want to learn about is about decimals. Now, currently, I can't just write a decimal number over here like so. It's going to lead to an error. As you can see, there is a curly line. So the way I'm actually going to want to add decimals is by using a double variable, or using the double operator. So what double allows you to do is have non-integers that are still numbers. So like 50.5. Observe. So what I do is I write the word double, okay? And what I do is I make a new variable name, like non-integer, because it's not an integer, right? And I can call it 55.50, and that's it. Now, doubles and integers can be used with one another. Like, I can take a number and a double and just add them, all right? Or actually, wait, I can take a double and add a number to it. So it would be non-integer is equal to number plus non-int. So you can even print these values out, okay? All right. So now I'm just going to go ahead and just recompile and run that. And I'm just going to explain to you what this does. First, I print out the value of non-int, which right now is 55.5. Then what I did was I added the number 55 to 55.5, and I printed that out. Now you might be wondering, why is it 55.5 over here, and why is it 101 here? This is because code runs line by line. So even though the values are different, it's going to print out whatever is happening at that current line. All right. So now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and explain how strings work. So strings are just text. All right. Now text can also be numbers. All right. But this is really how strings work. So to write a string, you just use the string operator. All right. And what you're going to do is you're going to give it a variable name. I'm going to call mine text. And then you can just write some text, like here is text and some numbers. Now what I can do is I can go ahead and print this out. Text. All right. And we can just go ahead and just look at that. So here is some text. What I can also do is add two strings together. But instead of combining values, it's actually just going to concatenate which just means that the values are just going to be added together. Like, watch this. String text2 is equal to all right. What I can do is I can just go ahead and add text2 like that. And I can go ahead and print this out. And yeah, that's just how it works. Now you might be wondering, why is there no space here? That's because I never put a space. I can add a space. And voila, that's how it works. The next thing we're going to want to learn about is Booleans. So what Booleans are just true or false statements. Now you might be thinking that true or false statements might seem pretty useless, but they're very useful in if and else statements. And we're going to get to that in a moment. Or not in a moment, but we're going to get to that later. To make a Boolean, write Boolean, all right? And then I'm gonna, write the variable name, which is equal to, and you're gonna write true or false. And then you can go ahead and print this out. All right. Yeah, and you just print out true. Now, one thing you might have noticed so far is that all of these variables have the same structure. You first declare the type, then you go ahead and declare the name, and then you go ahead and declare its value. All right? And that's true for all of them, right? But you can also go ahead and just not have a value for it, and then later on go ahead and give it a value in the next line. All right, or so. Now, while this isn't a very good idea, it sometimes is necessary, but don't do it if you don't need to do it, because what happens is that sometimes, like currently over here in line 3, the value is null. So if I use that value, like add something or, check that value, it's going to crash the entire system. All right. Now that that's done, I'm going to go ahead and explain to you guys how conversions work. All right. So let's suppose if you have an integer and you want to use it with a string. Now, initially that's not possible, right? Think of it like apples and oranges, or think of it like different currencies, right? What you need to do is go ahead and convert the two of them. For example, if I have an integer called age and I set that equal to my age, 16, all right, and then I have a string, right? Sentence is equal to my age is. All right, now what I need to first of all go ahead and do is convert the age into a string. To do this, make a brand new string, like string age. And what you're going to want to do is go ahead and write string.value of, okay? And then it grabs in the value of whatever argument you have. So I take the value of age, okay? So yeah, I took the value of age and I set that value as a string. Now what I can do is go ahead and print this out. I can go ahead and print out sentence plus the age. And here is how it works at the end. My age is 16. So yeah, that's how you convert from an integer to a string. Now let's learn how to convert a string into an integer. So to convert a string into an integer, first of all, your string has to be only numbers, like so. String age is equal to 21. It can't have a single number. The next thing I do is go ahead and create an integer, and I call it my age as an integer. And what I can do, and then what I do is I do integer dot parse the integer, okay? And then I just take in the variable, which is age. Then what I do is I go ahead and print out that I can go ahead and just, use it as a regular integer. Like right now, I'm going to go ahead and just, I'm going to go ahead and just divide it, just to show you guys that I can, do anything what I want. So I'm going to take my age int, okay, and just divide it by 7. And that's actually going to be my age in dog years as well. All right, so as I printed it out, we got 3. All right, so now we know how to convert from integer to string and from string to integer. The next thing we're going to want to learn about is loops. All right, so what loops are is pretty simple. It's pretty self-explanatory. Loops are code that can run over and over again for a specific amount of time. Now there's 2 types of loops, for loops and while loops. So first let's learn while loops. Let's suppose if I have an integer called times, okay? And I just set that equal to 0, okay? Now let's suppose if I want to print out hello 5 times, or anything for like a specific amount of time. Now the way while loops work is they allow you to run a code for as long as a certain condition is not met. Observe, if I go while times is equal to 5, for example, okay, I can go ahead and actually just go print out hello. All right, so currently what's happening is that it's going to see if times is equal to 5. Now this statement is true, so the while loop is going to run. While loops will always run if a statement is true. Now as a result, it often leads to infinite loops. And I've actually created an infinite loop right now. So as you can see, this is constantly printing out hello until it's just going to crash my memory. Now, the reason for this is because the statement never becomes false. To do this, what I can do is take the value of times and increment it by 1. To increment by 1, we can go times is equal to times plus 1 or times plus plus. So now it's going to only run hello 5 times. This is because the statement is only true for 5 times. After that, the statement is false and it won't run and the program will end. Now, while loops rely on a condition. The way for loops work is more based off of how long you want something to run. In fact, let's just go ahead and print out hello 5 times in a for loop. To do this, all I'm going to do is, first of all, let's actually just delete this as well. I'm going to write for, and inside of my for loop, I can write 3 things. First, the integer, so I'm going to write time, and I'm going to set that equal to 0. Then I'm going to write a condition as to how long it should run. Time, as long as it's greater than 5. And then I can just increment time by 1. And I can then just go ahead and print out hello. Hello. So now, if I run this, it's going to print out hello 5 times once again. because that's all what a for loop does. Now you might realize that for loops and while loops practically do the same thing. And you're not wrong about this. In fact, some languages like Go, they only have for loops, right? Because there's no point in having more than one type of loop. Use whatever you feel is more comfortable, and depending on the reasoning or the situation, right? If there's a condition, use a while loop. If there's a certain period of time, just use a for loop. All right? Now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and jump on over into if and else statements. All right, so if and else statements are pretty straightforward. They decide whether a certain amount of code should run. And the way it decides is with some Boolean logic to determine if a statement is true or false. For example, let's suppose if I have an integer called age, and that's equal to 16. Okay? Now let's suppose if I want to determine if the person is an adult. To do this, I can just write an if statement, and in brackets, I have a condition. Now the conditions are the same like in a while loop or in a for loop. So I can just go like, if age is greater than 18, or greater than or equal to 18, and if it is, then I'm going to have these square brackets, and it's going to have, or curly braces, and they're going to have, like, I can do whatever I want here. Like, I can print something out like this, system.out.println, you are an adult, okay? And then you can also have else statements. The way else statements work is that if the first state, or if no statements are true, then this is like the last thing you want, right? Like system.out.println, you are not an adult. All right, now if we just go ahead and run this, you are not an adult. And similarly, if I write my age as, let's suppose, 18, it's going to say, sorry, I forgot to compile it, you are an adult. All right? Now, while this is pretty straightforward, you might notice that if statements are currently a little bit bland. You can't do much with it on its own. However, the way if statements are structured is very similar to that of or and AND, or of gates inside of circuit logic. So what I'm going to be explaining to you guys right now is called or and AND, or also known as Boolean logic. Boolean logic is basically just the logic as to how an if statement works. So let's first look at some or statements. An or statement will run if you have multiple statements and if one of those are true. For example, let's suppose if I have a Boolean, right, and it tells take trash, okay? And let's just set that to true, okay? And we have a Boolean called, mow underscore lawn. And we just set that equal to false, all right? Now, let's just forget about code for a moment and just think about a real life scenario. Let's suppose if your mom tells you, take out the trash or mow the lawn. If you do one of these things, you're gonna get $5. Now, of course, no one talks to their kids like that, but that's just a good example as to or statements, right? You can do this or that, all right? And similarly, let's suppose if you took out the trash and mowed the lawn, you would still get $5 in this scenario. So now let's just implement an or statement, right? So we would go if take trash, okay? And or, so to use or, we would go shift and then go backslash, so you get these straight slashes, or mow lawn. Okay, so what this does is, so since take trash is true and mow lawn is false, it's going to run take trash. Okay, and we can just go ahead and print out system.out.println, you get $5. Okay, now let's just go ahead and run this. You get $5. And yeah, that's just or statements. Now, the way and statements work is, and let's just forget about code for a moment and just talk in the scenario. Let's suppose if your mom says, take out the trash and mow the lawn, and then you will get $5. Now, in this case, what you need to do is both of the tasks, right? So to implement an and statement, just write the and symbol twice, okay? Now, since this statement won't be true, I'm just going to write an else statement right over here. And it's just going to print out system.out.println, you get nothing. Okay? Now, when I run this, you're going to notice that it's just going to print out you get nothing, as only one of the statements is true. All statements must be true for an and statement, and for an or statement, only one statement needs to be true. So now that we have if and else statements right done, we're going to go ahead and focus on functions now. And this is also something that I have referenced earlier in the video. Alright, so functions, you've actually seen a function already, and I've already said this before, but all the code you've written so far was inside of your main function. And yeah, that's really what a function does. A function writes code inside of it. Now, why might you want to write an extra function? You want your code to be modular. You want different functions for different tasks. For example, let's suppose if you want a function just to add numbers. Well, that's possible. So first thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and, write in, first of all, the value that you want returned. So if you don't want a value returned, you're going to write void. All right, but I want a value returned, right? So I'm going to write the word int. The next thing I'm going to want to go ahead and do is write the name for my function. Now, the name of my function can really be anything. So I'm going to write add because that's, sort of like the most logical one to pick. All right. So the next thing we're going to want to do is write a couple of arguments. Now, arguments are just things that you can insert into your function, like so. So int add, all right, and then what I'm going to write over here inside. So to make arguments, you're going to put two brackets, and then you're going to put your arguments, and make sure to specify their type, like int num1 and int num2. All right. But yeah, also make sure you write if it's a static function or not. This function is static, and as is most functions. It remains constant and the same. All right. Now inside of here, you can do really anything you want. Oh, what's the problem? Yeah. But what you need to do at the end of it is go ahead and return a value. Now, if you were to write void, for example, then you wouldn't have to return a value. All right. Similarly, you can also return a Boolean, a string, anything. Right now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to return num1 plus num2. Now, any variable here cannot be accessed in the main function and vice versa. The only value that the main function can access is the value that's being returned. So to call upon a function, first of all, what you're going to want to do is just make a variable to store the value. All right, you don't need to do this, but you kind of have to at the same time. Then you're going to call that function. The next thing you're going to want to do is go ahead and write in the arguments, like 1 and 3. The next thing you will want to do is just print out this value. This is just to check to see if everything works. Okay, and we're just going to print out num. So first we're going to compile the program, then run it. As you can see, we got 4. So we added 2 numbers without even adding them in our main function. We have a different place to do that task. So yeah, that's just the basics of Java altogether. If you guys like this video, leave a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. Leave any questions in the comments below. Have a nice day.